Hi, I'm Magic Lance. I'm an independent artist and creator of the adventure romance webcomic Changeling. You can read it for free on my Patreon and other comic hosting platforms. All links are in the description. Happy October, everyone. You read the title, Inktober is here, and with every year I set out to do it, I always fail. However, in this video, I challenged myself to do all 31 Inktober prompts in one day. I'm not the first one to come up with this idea, but I thought I would give it a try. However, the first clickbait is that I'm not going to do 31 individual drawings, but split the list into 7 illustrations. More on that in a bit. And the second clickbait is that I'm not using the official Inktober list, but Magictober, which has the most beautiful prompts created by the extremely talented Alyssa's art. The goal of this challenge is to finish them all in one day, so I'm not too concerned with making each one perfect. Just finish enough to get the idea across. Last year, in 2023, I had broken my spell of never completing Inktober. I did all 31 drawings, one each day. It felt good to finally do what was always such a chore for me every October, but I hated it, to be honest. I was juggling a lot at the time, but I was so fed up with having to go another year without finishing the challenge. So after I did it, I never wanted to do it again. So here I am, October 5th, 2024, doing it again. This time, I'm going to get it done in one day, rather than prolonging the pain for 31 days, like I did last year. And with those beautiful prompt lists, I was excited to try them all. So here starts the challenge. With this first illustration, I'm using the prompts pond, familiar, cave, and forest, and also mirror. But I gave up on that last prompt and shoved into a different illustration, which you will see later. For each illustration, I wanted to tell a story, combining each of the prompts together. Part of the challenge is making the independent prompts feel like they make sense when combined into one drawing. For this illustration, I envisioned an ancient forest of withered oak trees at the mouth of a great yawning cave. A fox with a pelt as white as fresh snow hovers above the water's surface of the inky black pond. When she awakens, she will begin her search for the one who called her into this world as their familiar. I struggled a bit with this one. With each one, I had no prior planning, so I was just winging it as I go. I wanted the really stark negative space in the cave and the water to have a high contrast with the fox in the center. I used a fine pen and I scribbled all the bark onto the trees and all the other detailing on the cave. Bro, the utter shock I had discovering the felt tip pens that I owned since 2014 had finally dried up. For a moment, I thought the challenge was over before it started. The mirror effect, as I mentioned before, was really unappealing, so I scrapped it. I also seem to have misplaced my beloved white jelly roll pen that I use for the white detailing at the end of my illustrations, but I guess I'll just have to be that much more intuitive with where I leave the white space of the page. Oh my god, I decided to leave this in. Watch as tragedy strikes in real time. I was trying to get a super aesthetic footage of a washi tape pull, but I was playing my music too loud with my earbuds in that I didn't even realize or hear my dumb ass was ripping right through the page. I'm such an idiot. This still hurts to watch. Anyways, I put my glasses on after that. I'm amazed I even decided to continue on. On to the next illustration. The prompt for this one was claws, serpent, summon, and raven. With this one, I started off with one pose, then decided for one where I can get a more clear silhouette of the claws. I wasn't too keen on how this one turned out, to be honest, but my goal wasn't for perfection or precision. It was to actually be able to complete the damn thing in one day. And I was just on the second illustration out of 7, so I pushed forward with the idea. But then I had to fuck it up with the fangs and the claws since I didn't have enough contrast against the black of the raven's wing. But that's the joy of ink. You gotta commit. Even when you're insecure, it just makes you that much more bolder. And you have to accept the imperfections and learn from them. I think that's my biggest takeaway with Inktober each year. I learned how to be bold and just go for it. Even if I have no idea how I'm going to execute a drawing or how the final image is going to look. It's part of the process, and I gotta admit, as challenging as it can be, I'm still glad that Inktober inspires artists from all around the world to create and be a part of growing our skills and sharing our own vision for each prompt, learning together as a collective. For this illustration, my idea for the story is: a raven hastily takes flight to warn the Grand Mage of the impending threat on the horizon. A serpent spirit, summoned from evil intent, born from a drop of blood. It intercepts the raven's path, afloat in the swirling clouds of glimmering mist. The serpent tightly coils itself around the raven, but not before the raven's sharp talons claw through the serpent's side, with one last attempt for freedom before plummeting back to the earth. Or something to that effect. The prompts for this one was Sword, Spirit, Curse, Assassin, and Ruins. The next illustration really pissed me off. I was already pretty exhausted at this point. I started with a strong sketch, but I was discouraged by the complexity of it. And I also get a lot of anxiety with drawing faces with ink because I know if I mess up, it's gonna stand out so much more than everything else. But I pushed forward until I got to the hair. It was really testing my patience. I wanted her to look like the mist floating through him in this illustration, but it was really difficult. So midway through this drawing, I got up, took a break, blew off some steam, baked some banana bread, stretched, then got back to it. Refreshed and overconfident as ever, I started inking that stupid cape, and damn, that cape was a mistake. I feel like it just muddied up the composition and just messed with the flow of the shape of it. It was neither here nor there, but I had to commit, so I just ran with it. The story that I came up for this illustration was: returning to the old ruins, the assassin searched for the spirit that cursed him all those years ago. His arms and face have since been bandaged to hide the deadly curse eating away at his body and flesh. He was going to deal with that spirit for once and for all, finally finish what he couldn't do when he met her last. Under the moss-covered limestone arches of the temple, he finds her there with a coy smile. He charges forward to strike her down, but the spirit only found the deadly encounter to be amusing. It was all just a game to her. She effortlessly evaded his every move with an unwavering smile. With each attempt on her life, she would swiftly turn herself into a mist and disappear. She knew he couldn't kill her. The next illustration is using the prompts Siren, Ritual, Abyss, Grimoire, and Lurking. Oh man, this one. I really didn't know what to do with it. At this point, I was really starting to regret doing the combo tactic with the prompts because I just jammed them together from the chronological order for the most part. So I was left with trying to figure out what to draw for these prompts. I was so stuck on this one, honestly. It's really difficult trying to bring all these really strong aesthetics together into one illustration, but I managed to come up with this idea. Plus, I was also really influenced by my latest rewatch of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, so I did some BS mumbo-jumbo alchemy symbols to represent the ritual part. It's just like some bootleg version now, full mermaid alchemist. Finding a way to include the grimoire was also difficult. I wanted to all make sense. I felt like I could tie it into the ritual part of the prompt. Same for Lurking and Abyss prompts. I also lumped those together into the same aesthetic. The story I came up for this illustration is: it was the night of the full moon. A lone siren left the waters, crawling onto the cold sands. She could finally start the ritual. Carefully following the notes from the stolen grimoire, she smiled, thinking of how she soon will become one of the walking. Sacrificing her fins for legs, her gills for lungs, seeking lands beyond the waters where she could never go before. The waves crashed with desperation onto the shore, the hands of her sisters lurking in its murky surf. They pulled at her fins, begging her to return to the deep abyss of the sea, but they were too late. Anyways, it was a tough one, but I'm glad to be done with it. On to the next one. This illustration now accounts for the prompts Mirror, Oracle, Death, Mushrooms, and Portal. This one made me want to quit. At this point, I was very tired, but I was too far in to quit. But I had the problem of working with the prompt that I passed on before and put in this illustration. That was the prompt from Mirror from earlier. Another goal of mine was to make sure no prompt took too much of a sideline. I didn't want to shoehorn it in either, but for them to feel in harmony with each other and purposeful. Here again, I had difficulty with trying to bring the ideas together, so after some doom scrolling on Pinterest, I found a reference to use for a pose and started from there. But the reflection part is really challenging with ink. I struggled with it a lot earlier, so I was pretty stressed out with this one. As someone who has now gotten used to working digitally, I swear I motion Control Z in the air a few times while drawing this. The story for this illustration is: there was once a noble woman, fearful for her upcoming wedding day. She ran out into the night to search for the oracle mirror of legend. Its frame was surrounded by little white mushrooms that seemed to dance in the moonlight. The mirror's silvery surface glistened brightly, yet rippled like mercury. It is forbidden to look into, but overcome with her own curiosity and uncertainty, she peered over the edge, gazing upon her reflection, searching for an answer that could calm her ferocious heart. Yet as she peered into its silver pool, she saw death staring back at her, reaching out its skeletal hand through the mirror portal to pull her in, punishing her for seeking a truth she was not yet ready to see. This next illustration included the prompts Waveren, Guardian, Bones, and Demon. This one was probably my laziest, despite being the one I was the most excited for. However, I was so tired at this point that I just didn't have the energy to put into it. The prompts were so cool for this one, and I really wanted to find a way to tie them all together. Initially, I wanted to draw a guardian knight riding the Waveren, but I figured it would be quite challenging since he would have to be really tiny, since these are already really small drawings to fit in a pocket sketchbook. I decided to stop over-designing it and just keep it simple, so I just made the Waveren itself the guardian. I love drawing dragons. I always have and probably always will. So as tired as I was, my excitement to finally draw one fucking dragon was keeping me going. Another goal for these illustrations is to have them fill the 2 pages seamlessly, creating a flow across the horizontal span. I had to be smart with how I planned the composition to efficiently use the space, yet also be aware of what elements to overlap and such. The story behind this illustration is: a demon summits the Mountain of Light, where he meets the guardian Waveren, sitting upon a sea of bones, a graveyard of remains from the victims that fell by his might. Adorned with gold and jewels, with flaming eyes, the Waveren sought out his next prey. The demon laughed, the sound bellowed throughout the canyons. The demon didn't fear the creatures of the light, for he was the strongest of all his kind, and mere flesh could not stand in his way from conquering this world. The Waveren has seen these kinds of arrogant creatures before, but yet cared not for his hollow, avaricious ambitions, but only saw him as a tasty dinner. The next illustration is using the prompts Shadows, Hound, Swamp, and Veil. At this point, I was in disbelief that I made it this far, but I felt pretty good with the vibe of these prompts. Oftentimes, it takes me a few sketches to land on a good idea. However, I felt that the first sketch gave me enough of a glimpse into the direction I wanted to go. As tired as I was, I finally was starting to have a better feel for the medium and planning out the positive and negative space with the intention to avoid my previous mistakes. I worked carefully to make sure there was enough contrast between the forms and that the framing of the composition laid out all the figures so that they felt integrated in the setting. Seeing the footage now, the felt tip markers I was using had a bit of a patchy look, but I guess I'll just have to go back sometime and give it another layer. The story that I came up for this illustration was: through the dark hollow among the twisted cypress woods, following the smell of blood down to the edge of a stagnant swamp. It was the cadaver hound that finally discovered where all the missing bodies had turned up, their figures cloaked in gray veils muddied from the swampy waters. They drew closer like shadows, following along the edge of light. And with that last illustration done, the Inktober challenge is over. It does feel pretty good to be done with all 31 prompts of Inktober in one day, but I did take the easy way out. Anyways, are you doing Inktober this year? If not, I don't blame you, it's tough. Regardless, I hope you all have a great day. I'm gonna go watch a Halloween movie now. See ya.